All right, so we got some interesting developments in U.S. manufacturing to talk about today. We're seeing a pretty significant investment from South Korean automaker Hyundai, a big player in the industry. And this investment includes, get this, a $5.8 billion steel plant planned for Louisiana. Yeah, that's a big deal, and it's actually part of a much larger commitment by Hyundai. We're looking at somewhere between $20 and $21 billion that they're planning to pour into the U.S. And, the goal here is to really expand their manufacturing operations in America. Now, of course, this has sparked a lot of conversation and analysis. Some folks are framing this as a direct response to the tariffs that the Trump administration put in place. The thinking goes that those tariffs were designed to encourage exactly this kind of thing, to get companies to create more jobs domestically and to reduce our reliance on goods produced overseas. So let's dive a little deeper into the details of what Hyundai's actually got planned here. Okay, so this new steel plant can be located on a massive 1,700-acre site, and it's near Donaldsonville, which is in Ascension Parish, Louisiana. They're aiming to start construction in 2026. And once it's up and running, this facility is projected to churn out a pretty impressive amount of steel. We're talking over 2.7 million metric tons annually. And of course, a project of this scale is going to create a lot of jobs. They're estimating around 1,500 new full-time positions will be created. And it's not just any steel, by the way. They're planning to produce low-carbon steel, which is really important these days, with sustainability being such a big focus. Now, where's all this steel going? Well, mostly to Hyundai's vehicle assembly plants, which they already have in Alabama and Georgia. And this ties in directly with their big push into electric vehicles, or EVs. And speaking of EVs, Hyundai also has plans for a brand new electric vehicle plant in Georgia. But there's been a little bit of a shift in strategy there. Originally, it was going to be all EVs, but they're now adjusting those plans to include hybrid vehicles as well. Because, consumer demand could be a fickle thing and they want to be responsive in the market. And to make sure they got a solid supply chain for those EVs, they're also making some big investments in battery joint ventures. Again, in Georgia, they're partnering with companies like SK Onco and LG Energy Solution Ltd. to get those batteries rolling. Now, Hyundai's chairman, Jung-Ui Sin, has been pretty upfront about the strategic importance of all this investment. He's emphasized that it's really about strengthening the U.S. steel supply chain. And, that makes sense, right? If you're producing cars here, you want to have a reliable source of steel close by. But there's another interesting piece to this puzzle. Hyundai has also made a commitment to buy a significant amount of U.S. liquefied natural gas. We're talking $3 billion worth. So it seems like they're really looking to deepen their ties with American suppliers. And Chairman Chung, he's also been very clear about the scale of his investment. He stated that this is Hyundai's biggest investment in the U.S. to date. And he's even drawn a connection between this project and a meeting he had with President Trump back in 2019. Remember, this was in Seoul. And it seems that this project aligns with what was, at the time, the anticipated beginning of President Trump's second term. And, it's no surprise that President Trump has been pretty vocal about all this. He's been highlighting Hyundai's investment as a prime example of how his administration's tariff policies are working. The idea being that these tariffs incentivize companies to bring manufacturing back to the U.S. And he's also pointed out that, if you're making things here, you don't have to deal with those tariffs. So there's that added incentive as well. And G.D. Vance, the vice president at the time, has been on the same page, saying that companies that put their money into the U.S. and create jobs here, well, they deserve to be rewarded for that commitment. Now, Hyundai isn't the only company that's been making moves like this. There's a whole list of other big players that announced increase in dozen plans in the U.S. during the Trump administration. We're talking about companies like GE Aerospace, Eli Lilly, Apple, the tech giant Taiwan Semiconductor Manufacturing Company, a major player in the semiconductor industry. And then there's CMA CGM, a shipping company, SoftBank, a tech investment firm, Diamac, a real estate developer, and even Meta, the social media giant. So we're seeing this across a whole range of industries, from aerospace and pharmaceuticals to tech and logistics. It seems like there's a real trend here. But of course, with any major economic development, there are different perspectives and analyses to consider. These investments are often presented as clear victories for policies that are trying to bring manufacturing back to the U.S. But it's important to look at things from a more nuanced economic angle, right? So economist Michael Swantho, he's acknowledged that the goal of reshoring manufacturing is a worthy one, absolutely. But he's also cautioned that it's likely to be a long and potentially difficult road. He's pointed out that it takes a lot of time and money to build advanced factories, especially in sectors like semiconductors or advanced automotive production, which are pretty high tech. And then this is the question of workforce, right? Do we have enough skilled workers in the U.S. to build and run these new facilities? That's a valid concern. But Sanders also highlights the potential advantages that the U.S. has going for it, like our energy resources, which are pretty substantial and could give us a cost advantage. And then there are the constant advancements in automation and robotics that could help address those potential labor shortages over time. Now, even American steel producers themselves have been voicing some concerns. Companies like Nutricorp, Steel Dynamics Inc., and United States Steel Corp, these are major players in the industry, and they've expressed some worries about potential demand reduction, partly due to the tariffs and partly due to broader economic conditions. They've even told investors that they're expecting lower earnings in the first quarter, at least in part because of this uncertainty. And then there's the whole uncertainty surrounding the future of trade tariff policies. That adds another layer of complexity to the steel market. In the past, when tariffs have been reversed or delayed, it's created instability for businesses and investors, which makes it hard to plan for the long term. So, back to Hyundai for a moment. Some people see their investment as a direct consequence of the Trump administration's efforts to reshape global trade, to encourage more domestic manufacturing here in the U.S. And while it's being hailed as a success story for these tariff policies, the long-term economic effects and potential downsides are still up for debate. Economists and industry analysts are still chewing on that one. It's also worth remembering what happened with Foxconn, that company that was going to build a huge factory in Wisconsin. Those initial investment plans, well, they didn't quite pan out the way they were initially presented. So it's a reminder that even when you have big announcements, things don't always go exactly according to plan. And, despite all the focus on tariffs being the driving force behind this investment, U.S. factories already produce a lot of the cars in North America. We've got a pretty significant manufacturing base here already. But still, Hyundai's investment is the biggest they've ever made in the U.S. It's a major expansion of their commitment to manufacturing here. And the official announcement, they all went down at the White House with President Trump, Hyundai's chairman, and Louisiana's governor all present. And the timing of all this, well, it suggests that maybe Hyundai was already thinking about this investment. It might have been anticipating more protectionist economic policies down the line. So where does that leave us? It's a complex picture, right? Is this Hyundai investment a clear win for tariff policies? Or are there other factors at play here? Global manufacturing strategies, economic trends, the whole shebang is definitely something to think about. And hey, if you're enjoying this kind of deep dive into complex topics, make sure to like and subscribe to the channel. We've got a lot more to explore. Thanks for listening.